Have you ever walked away from an argument feeling like you should have said something smarter, or worse? Felt like you lost, even though you knew you were right? The truth is, winning an argument isn't about having the best facts. It's about using the right psychological tactics. Imagine being able to diffuse any confrontation, outmaneuver manipulative opponents, and convince others to see things your way, all without raising your voice. Sounds powerful, right? Well, psychology gives us the tools to do exactly that. Think about this. Studies show that logic alone rarely changes people's minds. Instead, emotions, cognitive biases, and social dynamics play a far bigger role. This is why great debaters, lawyers, and even politicians rely on psychological tactics more than raw information. And the best part? You don't have to be a master manipulator to use these techniques. In today's video, we're breaking down the most powerful psychological tactics to win any argument ethically and effectively. Whether you're dealing with a stubborn friend, a tough negotiation, or just want to hold your own in debates, these strategies will help you gain the upper hand. Stick around to the end, because once you learn these tactics, you'll never argue the same way again. Why should you care about winning arguments? Because arguments are everywhere. Whether you're negotiating a raise, discussing politics, or even convincing your friend where to eat, you're constantly engaged in subtle battles of persuasion. And here's the kicker: most people argue wrong. Psychologist Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, explains that people don't make decisions based on logic alone. Instead, they rely on subconscious biases, social pressure, and emotional triggers. This means that simply presenting the right facts won't always work, because people aren't purely rational. Studies in behavioral psychology show that arguments are often won before they even begin. How? Through framing, body language, and emotional appeal. Think about political debates. The winner isn't always the person with the best policies. It's the one who controls the conversation, appears more confident, and appeals to the audience's emotions. Even in everyday life, mastering these tactics can be a game changer. Imagine being able to de-escalate tense situations, persuade your boss to see things your way, or shut down manipulative people effortlessly. That's the power of using psychology in arguments. But there's a fine line between persuasion and manipulation. This video isn't about tricking people, it's about understanding human psychology so you can argue more effectively while remaining ethical. By the end, you'll know exactly how to disarm aggressive opponents, make your points stick, and even change someone's mind, without them realizing it. So, are you ready to level up your argument skills? Let's get into the tactics. The secret to winning arguments isn't about talking louder or throwing out more facts. It's about understanding how people think. Here are the most powerful psychological tactics to help you gain the upper hand in any debate. First, let's talk about the power of framing. The way you present an argument can determine whether people agree with you or resist your point. Psychologists call this the framing effect, a cognitive bias that makes people interpret the same information differently based on how it's presented. For example, if a doctor says 90% of patients survive this procedure, it sounds reassuring. But if they say 10% of patients die, it suddenly feels risky, even though it's the same statistic. In arguments, you can use framing to make your position seem more appealing. Instead of saying, "This idea is better," try, "This idea will save us time and effort." By shifting the focus to benefits rather than direct comparisons, people are more likely to agree with you. Next, we have the illusion of choice. People hate being told what to do, but they love feeling in control. Instead of demanding agreement, give them a sense of autonomy by offering two options, both of which lead to your desired outcome. For example, if you're trying to convince a friend to eat at a certain restaurant, instead of saying, "Let's go here," say, Would you rather try the new Italian place or stick with our usual spot? Now, they feel like they're making the choice, even though both options work for you. Another powerful tactic is mirroring and emotional validation. When people feel heard, they're more likely to lower their defenses and consider your point of view. A study by psychologist Carl Rogers found that people are more open to persuasion when they feel their emotions are acknowledged. Instead of immediately countering an argument, try repeating their concern in your own words. So what you're saying is, you feel this approach might not work because of budget concerns. This not only makes them feel understood, but also makes them more receptive to your perspective. Then there's the Socratic method, one of the most effective ways to dismantle an argument without sounding aggressive. Instead of stating your point outright, ask strategic questions that lead the other person to realize their position is flawed. If someone insists social media is completely bad for society, you could ask, so do you think it has absolutely no positive effects, like keeping people connected? By forcing them to consider the other side, they may adjust their stance without feeling like they lost. Let's talk about cognitive dissonance, a psychological phenomenon where people feel uncomfortable holding two conflicting beliefs. You can use this to your advantage by pointing out contradictions in their argument. For example, if someone says, "I don't trust science," but then talks about taking medicine when they're sick, you can ask, "If science isn't reliable, why do you trust medicine developed through scientific research?" This creates internal conflict, which often leads people to rethink their stance. One of the most underestimated tactics is silence and the power of the pause. Many people feel uncomfortable with silence and rush to fill the gap, often weakening their own argument. If someone challenges you, don't immediately respond. Instead, pause, nod slightly, and maintain eye contact. This forces them to keep talking, often revealing flaws in their argument or giving you more material to work with. Let's not forget the Ben Franklin effect. Research shows that people tend to like you more after they've done you a favor. If you're in a tense argument, ask your opponent for something small, like their opinion on an unrelated matter. This subtly shifts their mindset and makes them more cooperative. Ben Franklin himself used this technique to turn rivals into allies by asking to borrow books, creating a sense of goodwill. Finally, let's discuss anchoring, a psychological principle where people rely heavily on the first piece of information presented. If you're negotiating or debating, start with a strong initial statement that sets the tone. For example, if you're discussing salary, leading with a high number makes anything lower seem like a compromise. In arguments, setting the stage with a compelling opening statement can make your position seem more reasonable. Mastering these tactics will give you a serious advantage in any debate. But remember, winning an argument isn't just about proving a point. It's about guiding people to see your perspective without resistance. Now that you know the psychological tactics to win arguments, how can you apply them in real life? The key is practice, but in a way that feels natural, not forced. Start by using mirroring and emotional validation in everyday conversations. The next time someone expresses frustration, repeat their concern in your own words before offering your perspective. You'll notice how quickly they become more open to listening. This works especially well in workplace disagreements, relationships, and even online debates. Want to become more persuasive? Try framing your arguments differently. If you're negotiating a raise, don't just say, "I deserve a higher salary." Instead, say, "With my contributions, I've increased efficiency by 20%, which saves the company time and money." By framing it as a benefit rather than a demand, you increase your chances of success. Next time you find yourself in a heated discussion, use the power of silence. If someone challenges you aggressively, pause, take a breath, and let them fill the silence. People often weaken their own argument when they feel pressured to keep talking. Try this in a debate. You'll be surprised at how effective it is. If you want to persuade someone without resistance, try the Socratic method. Instead of arguing directly, ask thought-provoking questions. If a friend refuses to try something new, ask, "What's the worst that could happen if you gave it a shot?" Leading them to their own conclusions is far more effective than forcing yours. Finally, use anchoring to set expectations early in negotiations. If you're haggling over a price, set a higher expectation first. This makes anything lower seem like a reasonable compromise. If you're making plans, suggest a broad option first before narrowing down. The first piece of information you introduce shapes the entire conversation. These strategies work best when you use them ethically and adapt them to different situations. Start small, observe how people respond, and refine your approach. Soon, you'll find yourself winning arguments effortlessly, without even seeming like you're trying. Winning an argument isn't about being the loudest or the smartest. It's about understanding human psychology and using it to your advantage. The tactics we covered, framing, mirroring, the Socratic method, cognitive dissonance, and more, aren't just tricks. They're tools that can help you navigate conversations more effectively and persuasively. But here's the real secret. The best debaters don't just aim to win. They aim to guide the conversation in a way that benefits everyone. If you use these techniques wisely, you'll not only win more arguments, but you'll also build stronger relationships, negotiate better deals, and handle conflicts with confidence. Now, I challenge you, try one of these tactics in your next discussion. Maybe it's using silence to gain control, framing an argument differently, or simply asking a strategic question instead of pushing your opinion. Then, come back and let me know in the comments which tactic worked best for you. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more psychology-backed strategies to improve your communication skills. And remember, the real winner of an argument isn't the one who speaks the most, but the one who influences the outcome.